Ooh, I'm in a sassy mood. I'm in a sassy mood because I was up until 3 a.m. sitting in Anytime Fitness's lobby trying to find Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi has been one of the biggest challenges of this. I bought the Verizon data on steroids package to use as a hotspot. It has not worked, and that's because before you give me all kinds of suggestions, I also bought one of those repeaters. You're asking Wi-Fi to go through not only metal, but then insulation and plywood and into a van, and it's just... but I gotta produce these videos and edit, and I got the blog and blah, blah, blah. So, I didn't bring my Xanax on this trip, and so I am just wound tight right now. I also, in the past 2 or 3 days, I missed one little piece of this damn microphone system that you're supposed to connect this to this to this, and I forgot. And subsequently, I recorded absolutely zero audio, and I'm not even sure it's working right now. We'll get there. Anyway, so I'm going to go back and kind of tell you about the things that I lost all my delicious sarcastic commentary for because I'm an idiot and forgot the one attachment. I've already taken you up the Hunting Island Lighthouse. We went through McClellanville and Charleston, and so here's where my voice dropped off in all my audio. We will regroup. I went to Adams Run. Adams Run is this tiny town that pretty much absolutely nobody stops in. I went there because they have a post office that was built in 1843, and I really wanted to see that. When I got there and I told them I was traveling and driven specifically to see this post office, the lady looked at me like I had 5 heads. But she did tell me that it's called Adams Run because during the Civil War, in the creek right across from that post office, the soldiers would sleep by the water, and a doctor whose last name was Adams, his house was sort of catty corner to that, and he would treat the soldiers either in his house or down at the river. So now it's called Adams Run. Then I went to Willtown, Bluff. And Willtown is a historic settlement that dates back to 1704. There's supposed to be remains of a colonial village there. I saw some really old houses that were being lived in, but clearly not being taken care of. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say right now that that is not worth the time. It was the first time that the Bay Bus has off-roaded, and I was completely freaked out that things were going to start falling off the walls. God knows I was warned that the ceiling tiles were going to fall down and the shelves were going to fall down and stuff was going to fly out of the cabinets. We went plowing down that road and not a damn thing fell over. I don't know where this sort of theory that everything you put on a van is just going to fly across the room. If you've secured it and if you've actually attached it correctly, it won't. And so we went through potholes and in the sand and hit some slippery spots, and she just kept on trucking because the Babe Bus is a tough bitch just like her owner. Moving on. I stopped in Jacksonboro, again another town that I'm pretty sure nobody goes to, and what I wanted to see there was the Pon Chapel of Ease. These church names kill me. They're very long, but it's abandoned, and the Pon part, that is out of respect to the Indian settlement that was once there, the settlement of Pon. 1735 this town was settled. Just amazing. Now, all the gas stations and urban sprawl that are there now, those are not reflective of that time period, but you get the idea. Okay, so in 1801, the Pon Chapel of Ease burnt down. They nicknamed it Burnt Chapel. Super creative. Anytime you go to an abandoned church in the South, at some point the history is, and then it burned down. I don't know if everyone just left the candles on overnight. There were 2 things I thought were really interesting. One, there was a grave there that was a well, which I've never seen before and was super creepy because I'm not sure if he's at the bottom of the well or just being held down with some cinder blocks around his feet, kind of like how we handle people in New Jersey. It was really interesting. I've never seen that done, but it did inspire me that when I die, what I want is a memorial slip and slide. But if you look at the side of this chapel, you'll see this is called a Flemish bond, and it's a type of masonry, and what they did is they alternate stretchers, which are the sides of the brick, and then they switch it around and put the head of the brick, the header, so it's like the lengthwise and then the head and then the lengthwise, and it's this pattern that is really mostly decorative, but you'll see it around this area, and it's called the Flemish bond. I got to stop at this little roadside market, and they had cider and all kinds of southern knickknacks. It's just a really cute reminder of low country area. They had all the okra and the pickled this, that, and the other thing, and the beans and baked goods, and it is nice to see some stores like that still being successful in an era of Walmart and Target. Let's rewind a little bit. I do want to tell you about the Abbey, the Mepkin Abbey that was in Charleston. This was another thing that I lost audio for on my microphone. I took my friend Caitlin. Caitlin and I used to report together. And she's also the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my life, that bitch. And it used to be a plantation, and then again, I'll put sort of the details more on the blog for these. But we did not know that monks take a day off from giving tours. So we went on a Monday and it was closed. We got to go around the gardens. We did run into some monks, and I've never been so nervous to take a picture with somebody, because I thought that, one, women couldn't be monks, and two, that they weren't allowed to have any fun or talk to people. But we were like, hey, can we take a selfie? And they were totally down for it. Beautiful grounds, beautiful area. And I don't know why this was so fascinating to us, but the original owner of the plantation, his family is buried there, and they tell this story at his grave on this marker that his daughter, his little girl, had smallpox, and they thought she was dead, and they went to wrap her up and put her in the ground, and they realized that she wasn't dead. Whoops! So he was so horrified by this. He was so horrified. They didn't have technology to test for really low heartbeats and comas, that he said when he died, his son could only inherit his land if he wrapped him in cloth and set him on fire, which the son did, because I'm sure that the son was give me my inheritance. I'll burn the hell out of you for that. But it was the first documented cremation in the United States of America. Who would have thought you go to nowhere outside Charleston to an abbey, you find not the world's first cremation, but the U.S.'s first documented cremation. I mean, you just got history everywhere. Kind of morbid, but kind of cool. And last but not least, we noticed that the giant oak trees, where during the growth spurts and the bark pulls back and new bark is revealed underneath, kind of like having stretch marks, but better looking than the ones that we get. It looked like they had carved these scales into that wood. If somebody knows the answer to this, I would love to know the details, because we could not figure it out. It looked like there was a snake underneath the bark. It was totally bizarre. It looked like it was done by humans, but you'd have to crawl so high up, and I mean, don't these monks have to pray? Now I'm in Beaufort. The weather is absolute crap. I've been dodging rain all day long. I'm still pretty tired from last night, but I'm gonna try to make it out and make the most out of this day and this beautiful city. Beaufort was the first southern city occupied by the Union troops, us, the Yankees, and that they held the occupation throughout the entire Civil War. So first was Charleston, Fort Sumter, and then after that they were like, all right, let's go find somewhere else. So they came down here, the Union soldiers, and they occupied Beaufort, and then they held it. And really, Beaufort, this area, is where all the plantation owners lived. And so they just, moved right into their homes. That it was called the Great Skedaddle, where all the Confederates who lived in Beaufort, when they saw those soldiers come in, they packed up their stuff, they got out of there, and subsequently there were 10,000 slaves left behind. And a lot of them, they just joined the Union forces because, I mean, wouldn't you? When you come to Beaufort, what you will see is that there's a lot of discussion about Reconstruction. And Reconstruction is really where, after the Civil War, this whole area, I mean the South really in its entirety was pretty much devastated. So they, you had these, in the North you had industry, and in the South you had agriculture. Well, after the Civil War, you could not have free forced labor in the form of slavery anymore. So there was no one to work these huge plantations, and everything economically collapsed here. So Reconstruction refers to the period that started during the Civil War and then after, when the South had to get its act back together. The arsenal here, which is where the visitor center is, was actually built for the Revolutionary War and then not entirely used because Beaufort was not a military town for the Revolutionary War, so it just kind of sat here. Well, then, we got into that whole scuffle, right, with the Civil War, and so the Confederates down here in Beaufort renovated the arsenal and went out of their way to put in beautiful designer cathedral windows so that they could kick our ass in style. And we all know how that worked out, right? On the Riverwalk in Beaufort, we see that? You see the shells? Those are oyster shells, and this is called tabby. Tabby starts showing up in architecture from, I guess, this point down to Florida. It's a Spanish influence, and what they did, it's a very primitive type of concrete, is they mixed burnt oyster shells, turned it into lime, and then mixed sand and water and created this stucco. And you'll see it in this part of the country, and it is resilient as all hell, because I'll tell you what, vinyl rips off a building. Tabby ain't going nowhere.